So apparently a vulnerability from, or it's labeled CVE 2007 in the Python standard library, which is a tar slip, which is basically a zip slip, but in tar files vulnerability in the Python standard library, is finally in 2023 going to be fixed. They are going to, in Python 3.2.12, going to start warning people that their vulnerability, and 3.14 will finally break the functionality to make it secure by default. All it took was
kind of a impressive time to remediation.
I know. It only took a company with what was the company? Trellix, attempting to fix the vulnerability by generating 65,000 open source pull requests to fix the vulnerability across open source to get the Python standard library developers to actually fix it. Yeah, we shouldn't have to generate 65,000 pull requests to fix a security vulnerability. I mean, like, it works, but we should just fix it at the source. I posted a link in the chat if anybody wants to see. Yeah. Art.
Yeah, I was about to comment on that, but I'm not sure that's our agenda, so
No, it's not our agenda,
that is side commentary as we
it's just great that the CVE number starts with 2007.
Yeah. No, but I mean, there's a small serious aspect to this. Sure. I mean, and I think, I don't know this, I don't recall this particular one, Jonathan, but it was fixed at the source. It's just no one else downstream noticed.
No, it just never was. Like, people reported it, and they're like, yeah. This is implementing the tar specification as defined,
right?
And so we're not fixing it. And it's been this lingering security vulnerability since 2007. And so finally, because some group generated 65,000 pull requests to try to fix it across open source. Apparently they were inspired by my work. I've spoken to them and they're like, yeah, your DEF CON talk inspired this. I'm like, oh, great. So
sorry. So yeah, so the source chose won't fix initially.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
then once kind of the ecosystem decided to accept fixes, they were kind of
Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
So I am posting the notes in there for anyone wondering. We were just kind of talking about a super old bug that was originally won't fix and now is getting
gotcha.
fixed.
Yeah. Right. I also added my own 10 cents to that thread. This thread about this vulnerability started back in, well, actually no, it was copied from the original ticket on their original issue tracker, open back in just forever ago.
So for everyone, apparently I'm running the meeting today. So any problems with running the meeting, please file your complaint. We have to follow the code of conduct, which is posted in the notes, which I posted in the, I don't know what you call it, chat thing in Zoom. If you could please change your name from the gray font text to the black font text if you are here. If you're wondering why each week you have to manually type in your thing, you have to like scroll down to page 68 and add yourself to the template that gets copied. And first thing on the agenda, is there any volunteers to scribble notes as we discuss items? Being none, I'll attempt to scribble notes, but if anyone can pitch in, that would be handy. Oh, thank you so much, Madison. And is anyone here new to the group? I'm recognizing a lot of the names because it's new friends intro time. Nope. All right, cool. We just have those of us who have been around. No one put any open issues in the opens list. Did anyone have any they wanted to bring up? We're gonna have a very short meeting, aren't we? I I think from an open perspective item, unless I'm hallucinating, Jonathan submitted to DEF CON a talk, or was that me just hallucinating things in Slack?
That is correct. He submitted something in the policy track. I see he's not in front of his camera. I'm gonna take the time to replace him for this. But yeah, essentially he's waiting on approval and he should be presenting his vulnerability disclosure policy idea.
All right, awesome. I know the CFP submission due date was yesterday, and usually it takes them a couple weeks to review and accept. Now that Jonathan is sitting back. Jonathan, if the talk gets accepted at DEF CON, is it just going to be one person or a panel doing the discussion?
It was the talk that I submitted was submitted by moi. So it's not intended to be a panel, it's intended to be an individual speaker sort of based thing. If it ends up, so the way that DEF CON is handling stuff this year, they're doing PolicyCon as a part of main stage. So I submitted it as their choice of they can have it as a main stage 45 minutes. That's ideal. They can have it as a main stage 20 minutes. And I detailed what I would cut in the outline if they chose for 20 minutes. And then I also detailed if you want to shove it into the PolicyCon, because they're still running PolicyCon independently as well, you know, how would that change? And they basically said the policy version tends to be more collaborative, and so I can make a talk more collaborative. It's hard to make a talk collaborative from main stage. Just the audience.
Well, I know if you submitted to Policy Village, those were meant to be more like Q&A interactive, but it sounds like you went for the main stage, so that makes sense.
Yeah. It's just that this year they said they were doing main stages. They were doing policy stuff on main stage, so yeah. You know.
All right.
Yeah.
So I guess the next thing we can do is sub projects, and then after that, if we want to flip through any of the.
I have an open.
Wait, hold on. All right. What is your open?
My open is we have the model outgoing vulnerability disclosure policy has been ratified by the TAC. Yay! So yes, so that's awesome. We sat down with the TAC yesterday. Mike Dolan joined the call. TAC asked Mike a couple of questions. Mike Dolan is LF's legal counsel / PM. I did not know he ran double duty until a conversation yesterday. Yes, so that was really helpful. And so we just need to find a place for it to live, find a place for that policy document to get turned into a markdown file. I don't know if we want to put it under the vulnerability disclosure working group, or if we want to put it in a policy work a GitHub repository, or if we want to make a GitHub repository dedicated to just this thing. I don't know.
I believe the idea in Slack was to start a TAC level issue to discuss where to stick it, and then we can see, since we want to go as high up as possible for visibility.
Like the .github or something.
There was not specificity in the Slack comment, but they were just suggesting go as high up as possible so it gets visibility. So we may want to clarify on that one, unless anyone here has any specific input on that one.
I would love it if working groups took greater advantage of GitHub pages, because because in my experience, it's websites or Google is really terrible at indexing GitHub versus Google's pretty good at indexing websites. And so if we use GitHub pages, the content could end up on a website that Google could index, but we could always put hey, you want to contribute to this? Click this link, and then you get to the GitHub page that has the same source code as the website. That's my
The only friction in there is that it becomes a code submission to do a change but you're right, like there's very little friction on that.
Right.
It
I mean,
should be
that's
something we use going forward with respect to like actual good static documentation. That makes sense to me.
yeah. I mean, I think that the idea is that once a document has gone through the life cycle of like becoming an official document, then most of the changes to that document stop happening in Google Docs and start happening in changes via GitHub. Like that was the idea, especially around like, I don't know, that we've been doing that with the guides as well. For what reporter guide and all that stuff is like, they're not getting dumped back into GitHub. They're dumped back into Google Docs. They're remaining in GitHub.
And just to be specific, do you know if it's true that GitHub pages are actually indexed nicely with Google's robot scraping?
It operates like a website, so I would assume that because it's a website, it does, right? Not like, as long as you tell Google, hey, scrape this. I mean, you can go into Google Analytics Manager and say, hey, scrape this please as well, or it'll eventually get discovered. But either way, it's a static website, and I know that Google doesn't necessarily do that for GitHub repositories because there's a lot of code and like, they don't care as much unless you're being very specific about what you're looking for.
Well, and it's also about like, I mean, we could have a longer discussion about this here, but it might be worth it to check if GitHub is actually okay with Google scraping these pages, because that at the end of the day would be it. And just to make sure that if like where we want to convert to a page to raise awareness and searchability, is there any other reason behind raising that?
I do know that the scrape. I mean, for example, I used to work for Gradle. Gradle's blog was run using GitHub pages, right? And like, so the SEO on that was already pretty good. So I'm aware of companies and organizations that are using GitHub pages as their prominent source for where they're hosting content.
Yeah, David.
Yeah, I don't know the exact details about Google's algorithms, but I mean, I know that many organizations host their web pages on GitHub through GitHub pages and such, including my own personal site. And getting back to the earlier comment about Google Docs versus GitHub, I mean, Jonathan's right, and this is actually a general recommendation and preference. A number of folks find early development on Google Docs really helpful because, oh my gosh, multiple edits. It's amazing. But figuring out what happened after the fact and tracking versions, yes, it does track, but it's rough. And once you get things in a more stable state, there's been a general preference to use GitHub, some sort of version control system so that you can, in general, almost always GitHub, so that we can actually track what's going on, review proposals, accept them one at a time, all that good control once it's in a more stable state.
Mhm.
Do we need a vote to ratify this decision, or is that just accepted and let's go?
Well, I think first we need to figure out where it's going to live, because that project is going to have to be the one to have the GitHub page, if that makes sense. It may not be our repo.
I've been in a bunch of working group calls and nobody has tried to solve the problem of where does stuff get hosted long term besides just putting in a GitHub repo. David, I mean, you probably have just as much context around the working groups as I do. Have there been any groups that have also tried to solve this in putting it in other places other than GitHub repos, or has it all just been GitHub repos and we should try to solve this uniformly across all of our orgs eventually, or against all of our projects eventually?
I think I would immediately pause on the word solve
I know.
because for most
Yeah,
folks there is no problem, so therefore there is no need for a solution. Most of the working groups post on GitHub for their final results. We're done. We move on. The only thing to be solved so far was the hey, wait a minute, there's all this GitHub junk in the top when I look in the markdown. Turns out if you add sharp readme at the end of the URL, when it generates HTML from Markdown, it'll quietly insert a README ID at the very top of the content. And so if that's all you, if you're, it's okay on GitHub and it's okay if you just start with the text, that's all you need to do, and the problem is solved. If you want it to look nicer and beyond that, I mean, the obvious solution is to put it on the OpenSSF website, which is totally doable. It's a WordPress website. We can talk about that, but yeah, there is such a site. Currently, what we've been doing is the OpenSSF site has some high level things that don't change as much, and then it points off to things posted on GitHub. We don't have to do it that way. We can use the OpenSSF website more. We could use the pages. But somebody has to say, hey, this is a problem, here's why, and here's what we recommend instead.
Hi, here's a problem. Try searching for either our finder's guide or our reporter's guide, or receiver's guide on Google. I don't know if they actually come up. Like, if you're looking for, like, let's say, assume you're not using the term OpenSSF, right? You're just like, I want to know how to report a vulnerability to open source. We don't have great SEO for having those results come up in any sort of, Dave is actually doing it.
However, most people do land on the website. So if just getting a page on the website is valid, that may be
Right.
A, it'll get
You know what?
indexed, and B, people will find it.
You know what? I just searched for guide for evaluating open source software, and granted, different people will get different results. But for me, the OpenSSF guide is the first non-sponsored result. Number one. You can't beat that for SEO.
That's fair. Are you running it while you're logged in, or is this an incognito tab?
Absolutely, which is why I said, hey, wait a minute, it's not fair because
Yes.
Stream it or it didn't happen.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? Why don't I do an incognito window? Because that will probably be a fair.
I would propose we keep this demo for the end of the meeting if we don't have any more topics to discuss. I would give it back to Nicole because we've been spending 7 minutes on this.
Yeah.
So we can discuss later, but it sounds like WordPress is an option, Google Pages is an option.
Okay, quick question about that. If we were to use Google Pages, but we also wanted it on the website, could we can we throw an iframe on the website and then on the WordPress website so that if we update?
I'm gonna table that for an issue because I feel like that's a religious argument you've just started.
Iframes? Really?
Yeah. We may not have UX people here, but you may have started a religious argument. So I feel like we can sort that one out.
I want to keep the content in sync. All right, fine. We need some solution to keep the content in sync in a way that's cohesive, that doesn't doesn't require us like asking the WordPress admin every time to keep it updated.
So I'll start that issue and I'll post it in the notes in the Slack for everyone to comment on.
Thank you.
I did a quick scroll through the open issues, and there was some stuff about marketing and other things. Like, nothing jumped out at me as currently having a lively discussion. Is anyone in a lively discussion in one of the issues, or should we talk about the sub projects?
There's a somewhat lively discussion happening around the work that David Wheeler is doing. But that was mostly that. Do you want to touch on that at all, or is it already been covered in previous meetings, David?
I'm trying to type at the same time here, so to respond to the earlier question. Okay, you want to talk about the LF wide one? Is that what you're asking about?
Yeah, safe harbor.
Okay, I mean, there's not much to talk about yet. Jonathan had drafted something earlier. Our legal folks took one look and said, "Oh my gosh, no," and so I understand Jonathan's desire for something. So he and I had basically sat down for an hour and tried to start thinking about what it might have. And I guess my current thinking, which may not be right, is trying to come up with a basic idea work briefly with our legal folks to come up with something that might work, bring it to this group, bring it to legal, because I think basically if there's going to be a statement from the Linux Foundation itself about legal stuff, it's got to go through legal. I
Hmm.
mean, what a surprise. It'd be nice if we could get something approved that other people could steal and copy. Frankly, I would like it to be worth stealing and copying, but
Hmm.
I can't, I know that there were some concerns from legal. I don't know at what point what I'm allowed to say and not, but I do know that there were legitimate concerns based on bad things that either had happened or were currently happening that made them not like the original text as was drafted. So I'll put a period right there. Comments, questions?
I guess my one comment, I don't see any other hands, is I know like HackerOne and BugCrowd and Microsoft and Disclose.io all have pretty public safe harbors.
Yeah.
I guess I could kind of do a quick compare and see what the common elements are, because I feel like we could
That'd be awesome. Yeah.
be
Yeah.
like all the popular ones on the internet have these 4 elements or something type thing.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah.
I feel like this is a Chat GPT project. I'll do it manually and Chat GPT just for the lulz.
Hmm.
Yeah, but I think getting it through a legal review is going to be a whole lot more than a Chat GPT thing. But
Well,
but yeah,
like I
if we
said,
could
just
steal good.
just to find what elements are common, like
Sure, go for it.
not for the verbiage, and then we can start beg borrowing and whatever across the internet for ones that match those areas.
Right. The other concern that I'm gonna put my maturity level, right? Maturity for actually receiving, like the Open Source Security Foundation or the Linux Foundation wants to create this general policy for here's how to report security vulnerabilities to all LF projects. The concern may be here as well that some projects may not be mature enough to actually receive these reports or do anything about them, and or like basically what might end up happening is a bunch of vulnerabilities get disclosed, none of them get fixed, a bunch of projects, a bunch of security researchers drop O-days on LF projects. And David was pointing out that there are certain LF projects that are in maintenance mode and are not funded. And so does that have a negative look for the LF if there's no one to receive these reports, and yet we've opened the floodgates against them? And I know none of you work for the LF, but it's still a question to ask.
I feel like if we go down to notes or meetings ago, that there was a discussion that there was an email address and it did go somewhere.
Right.
I could be very wrong. But your point is perhaps fine, on right? Volume?
I'm saying, is it, or I mean, I guess the question for David and anybody else who's going to be involved in this process is, legal needs to be okay with the knowledge that there will be vulnerabilities that are disclosed to the LF that go nowhere and end up having to become public vulnerabilities that are unpatched because of the state of how the LF the LF has funded projects and unfunded projects.
Yeah, I don't think that's the issue. I don't think that's the issue at all. Yeah, I think they're. I mean, I can't. I think technically, well, how's this? I can't formally speak for them, but they've never raised that as a concern. I don't think that's their concern.
Legal or the projects?
Legal.
Okay.
You're right about projects need to be comfortable with that. I'm not sure I can point to any LF projects that would be shocked by that. Maybe somebody somewhere. I mean, the Linux kernel folks, their main complaint is, we'd love to fix vulnerabilities, please help. we get they get and to be fair, they're a little bit of in the firing line, but people love to send them fuzzer dumps.
Mm.
Oh look, here, we ran a fuzzer, we ran it for 300 computer years. Here's the outputs. Go figure out the problems and fix them all, please.
I spoke to Tavis Ormady about somebody doing that a few years ago, and that like most of the reports went nowhere. I think that explicitly saying like, carving out that like we don't want automated tooling outputs without an analysis associated with it.
Right.
That is a separate thing though than safe harbor, which is
No. Yeah, I agree.
It
Yeah.
is, but the broader issue of what are projects comfortable with? I mean, if an open source software project isn't comfortable receiving a bug report, I don't know what they think they're doing.
But what I mean, I guess the question is like, what about services that may be running hosted by sub projects under the Linux Foundation that are unfunded, right? Like and those are live systems that are running on some compute somewhere that may have data behind them, that may be sensitive or not.
I mean, at this point, I can't speak for everybody else in the world, but at least for any of them that are also involved in open source projects, I think the feeling they're already used to getting report. And frankly, anybody who runs a service should expect that users will be unhappy about something that they do, and that they'll get reports about some problems. Again, if you run a service and aren't prepared to receive critiques, I don't know what you're doing. The bigger issue, and you and we've talked about this, and I believe this group have talked about before, is what if it's not a service you control? Because like this is not just LF. Every organization, large organization, tends to use other services that are actually controlled by others, and we can't give them, we can't say, hey, sure, attack those other orgs. I know that was already addressed.
That's why you have a scope, though. That's the scope.
That's
clause.
right. That's right. Exactly.
I see Francis
David.
has a hand.
So on that specific kind of issue, like a few bug bounty programs also have to deal with this. Essentially, we can be very explicit in the wording that say like we will acknowledge and consider things in scope if it is our use and integration that is failed or that is at risk here with the vulnerability and so on. If it is something in the actual service that is being used, we recommend reporting straight up to these other services.
Using their process.
Correct. We have to do this.
So it sounds like, to your point, as part of like a default VDP, it's like, when people report things out of scope, just let them know that that's out of scope type thing is like a recommendation for maybe like an FAQ item.
I would assume a VDP will also include the scope of what is considered good research and good reports. So we could put that in there.
And I believe we called out just dumping results of automated testers.
Automated tests and automated fuzzing and all that, those are legit tools to find, things. But as Jonathan was saying, and I agree fully there, it needs to come with an analysis that makes sense, not just pure raw. And
Yes.
All right. So for the sub-projects, it looks like we have update that there is presentations being prepared for the cert fig. The plan's still under review. Does anyone have any additional info there? Nope. However, for the CVD guide for consumers, there's an active seeking contributions for work on a specific document, which is linked in the notes. So if anyone wants to help with the guide for open source consumers, it's currently in Google Doc form and it's got an outline, but it looks like it's trying to actually have content within the outline. I feel like we already went over the issue 123. Or am I conflating this with the one that just went through TAC?
No, that let me double check.
I'm pretty sure that's the one that just went through TAC.
Oh God, some people confuse these two. It's because I'm working on both. Okay, let me clarify. Nope, this is the wrong link. It's the wrong link. Let me fix it. This is blah.
Hey, Jonathan, for the sake of everyone, would you mind reminding us all about the difference and the subtle differences between both of them?
Yes, so this should be the autofix sig. Oh God, I've gotten signed out of my, great. You're like, in the exact moment you need it, Google's like, hey, you gotta verify that it's actually you again. Hang on one second. So this is the autofix sig, focused on, it's a specification. Here we go, found it. There we go. So the first guide was the manual disclosure policy for the outbound vulnerability disclosure policy for reporting vulnerabilities manually. This is the specification for defining what is a open source security foundation compliant automated vulnerability fix campaign. So this is about when you are fixing vulnerabilities at scale across open source via bulk pull request generation, doing so in a way that is not, or doing so in a way that has the least harm to maintainers and highest impact, positive impact towards protecting open source. So we're engaged in discussions with GitHub around, GitHub is announced some features around allowing for private vulnerability disclosure via PDR. I will screen share real fast. I have been working on a flow chart for how we want to do. Here, let me pull this up. This is the proposed flow chart for how you will disclose vulnerabilities via PMV, how you will automatically generate a pull request to fix a vulnerability via PMPVR, which stands for a pragmatic means of private vulnerability reporting. Basically, whatever so GitHub has private vulnerability reporting PVR, but there may be other mechanisms for other repository hosts.
Are we supposed to be looking at a piece of notepad paper with 4 words on it and a lot of arrows going multiple different directions?
No.
Yeah, I think you're sharing the wrong
Okay.
screen.
Thank you for saying something. I don't know what screen I shared. Here, let's try this. Is that better? Are you seeing a lucid chart page? Hey, there we go.
Much
Thank
better.
you. I don't know what I was screen sharing.
Back.
Hope it didn't have any PII in it. I don't think it does, even mine or anybody else. Okay.
Well, it's on internet now.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Go ping heel. Strip this out of the call. Call recording. So at a high level, asking if the repository or looking if the repository host supports PMPVR. If the repository has it enabled, submit the fix via that. Otherwise, open an issue asking the maintainer to enable PMPVR. And then waiting 35 days and then submit the report that way. If none of that works, send an email. If we can't find an email to disclose to, at that point, you just open a pull request. That's the current proposed flow. This is just the flow for getting the vulnerability reported. It's not the entire flow for how to get it fixed, like verify that it's fixed, yada yada yada. This is just the reporting phase. But it gives us a starting point for defining this specification, and this flow will end up in that document. So those meetings are happening. There's actually one today. Those meetings are to discuss this, are part of the AutoFix SIG vulnerability disclosure meetings. And they are occurring every Wednesday. We bumped it from every other Wednesday to, because the work is happening so prevalently on this work, we bumped it to every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern. So the next call is tonight, if any of you are available to join. Any questions on this? Hearing none. Either I made no sense.
Obviously, you made a good flowchart.
Yeah, either I made absolutely no sense or everybody thinks it's very clear. I don't know. It's one of the two.
The flow chart has a clear start and finish, so
Yeah.
no questions.
Right, so I guess the last sub-project with notes is the OpenVex SIG, which it looks like it was adopted, but we need legal to review. I guess that means that it's breaking off into its own meeting. Would that be accurate?
Oh, also, sorry, jumping back a quick second.
Yes.
The autofix SIG is also, I think, had enough meetings to qualify as an actual SIG. So there will be a vote to adopt it that I will post, and I'll just need to talk to Chrome about how to do that. Sorry, I just needed to throw that in there.
And it sounds like the OpenVex one is in the same situation. Does anybody happen to know where or when?
Yeah, OpenVex is an actual SIG, and we do meet. As a matter of fact, we met Monday. We meet Monday. Oh, hold on, let me make sure that about the date and time on that.
Yeah, Monday. I can tell you the Israel time, but I guess
I can tell you Eastern.
3 o'clock Eastern. So we'll go with that for now. So I guess any other updates from OpenVex?
Hey Jay, sorry to on OpenVex again. I don't know if you folks have gotten the SIG meeting added to the calendar for OpenSSF, or if this is something you would like to have so that you can invite more folks. But right now I don't see it.
I do see it on my OpenSSF
Never
calendar
mind.
subscription, but
I see
Never
it.
mind, it
calendars-
is in
okay,
there.
Yep.
It is in there.
Did you guys hear me?
Very well.
So-
It turns
do now.
out I was using whatever rendering of calendar, which did not show up.
Oh.
So yes.
Calendar is hard.
Scheduling is so hard.
It is. I could briefly say, I think Jay at least was on that call Monday.
Yep.
We are looking at sort of OpenVex mission goals, scope. And that's one of the topics that group is working on.
Hey Jay, can you mute?
All right, and with that, we are out of sub-project notes. Does anybody have any other items, or should I kind of recap the pleas for assistance throughout the notes? All right, so reminder, the seeking contributors on the document for the guide for consumers. So if you've got some time to check in on that. And I am going to be doing one item for us to discuss. Do we want to WordPress versus whatever? Google page it for making us more indexable. And then I will also look for what do safe harbors tend to say in them, just so we have like a bullet point list of everybody has these 3 or 4 areas, and we can kind of go from there, because it sounds like we have to redo the safe harbor discussion.
Could you do us, when you are finding safe harbor policies that you are using for reference, there is an issue where I think I linked the disclose.io policy or safe harbor, but if you could throw links into that issue that just like, here are the ones that I'm looking at, and just like have it, leave that as a dumping ground for all the ones you find, that would be a resource. Much appreciated. I also, the Microsoft one is also one that I dug up, but I didn't end up throwing it into that pool. So yeah.
All right, with that, I guess we are done, which gives everybody time to go work on issues in the GitHub. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Well,